Epic and a happy Manga Tuesday. What's Happy Manga Tuesday? Happy Manga Tuesday って何? Happy Manga Tuesday. What's Happy Manga Tuesday?
Baka! Ooh! Hey! Manga Tuesday! Remember when Yamcha was relevant? Remember when Yamcha was good? No. Not really. Truth be told, he's always kind of sucked. He's always been the jobber of Dragon Ball. Hey, I'm Darcy, this is Manga Tuesday episode 119, and today I'm just going to be rambling about Yamcha. It's a pretty common sentiment that you'll see pop up online a lot, not just for Yamcha, but for all the characters who aren't Saiyans. People lament their lack of relevancy and sort of reminisce, wish for the days of past when it wasn't just Saiyans. There were other characters, humans and Piccolos that were also relevant in terms of strength and fighting the big baddies. And for the most part, I can agree. But there are a few that specifically refer to Yamcha when talking about characters they wish were still relevant. And that's where I have to interject. In my humble opinion, Yamcha has never really been that relevant and has always been the lowest of the main character fighters. And if you disagree with me, then let's take a little look back. Let's analyse things, shall we? At the beginning of the Dragon Ball Z portion of Dragon Ball as a whole, Yamcha dies first to a Saiyaman, an often joked about, often memed about moment. Perhaps Yamcha fans may pinpoint this as the moment where it all went downhill for Yamcha. In the following Namek Frieza stuff, he was nowhere to be seen, and then in the Cell stuff, he also was nowhere to be seen. I think he opted himself as like, I'm not going to be involved, guys. I'm not going to be any help here. He basically said himself, if I remember correctly, which for a lot of this video I might misremember things because it's been a while, but if I remember correctly during the Cell stuff, he basically says, yeah guys, I'm useless. I'm not going to be of any help. I'm just going to stay out of the way. So yes, while you might look at his Cyberman death as the death of Yamcha's relevancy, I'm here to prove to you that that is wrong. He has never really been relevant. He's always been kind of the chump of the group. So let's analyse. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning of Dragon Ball when he first encountered Goku. Those two have a little bit of a fight, and Yamcha actually, I believe, gets a little bit at the best of Goku, and this may very well be Yamcha's most impressive accomplishment throughout the entirety of Dragon Ball. I believe it's all downhill from that moment. Not to mention, it's heavily implied, if not outright stated, that the only reason Yamcha was able to even get the best of Goku is because Goku was very hungry. I believe he was fighting on an empty stomach, and that distracted him, and that he was not at full strength. But from there, it was all downhill. And a big point of my argument revolves around a big point of the Dragon Ball portion of Dragon Ball as a whole, the tournaments. The tournaments, I think, are where we really see Yamcha's purpose in Dragon Ball. Now, you will see he's not a complete weakling. He always makes it past the qualifying stages and always makes it to the final 8, but he never makes it out of the first round of the final 8, and he's always used as the guy to show how strong some other guy is. He's always putting someone else over. He's the jobber. At the first tournament, he pairs up with Jackie Chan in the first round and gets taken out, get beaten. He's used to show how strong Jackie Chan is. Compared to Krillin and Goku, Krillin makes it to the second round where he also faces Jackie Chan, but has a lot closer and a lot more interesting of a match against Jackie Chan and pushes him to his limits more than Yamcha did. And it's the same thing for every tournament. You jump to the second tournament, once again, Yamcha first round gets eliminated by Tien, and not only does he get eliminated, he gets his fucking leg broken and gets completely destroyed. Yamcha is used to show us just how strong and powerful this new character, Tien, is, who would eventually go on to pair up with Goku in the final. Krillin makes it to the second round, where I think he faces Goku and loses in a competitive, interesting fight. But once again, there's a hierarchy. Goku, Krillin, Yamcha. And then, Tien and others in between as other characters get introduced. But whenever a new character gets introduced, they're always introduced oftenly against Yamcha, and they destroy Yamcha to show how strong they are, and Yamcha is just the jobber to put them over. And then in the third tournament, once again Yamcha is eliminated in the first round, this time by Hiro, and he's just made a fool of and embarrassed and defeated. Now Hiro is technically Kami, I believe, in human form, so Yamcha is essentially fighting God at the time in the Dragon Ball verse. So he's not losing to Chops, he's losing to very powerful people, but he never had a chance in any of these tournaments, and he was never going to. He was always just used to show how strong someone else was, as I've said a lot of times now. Because guess what? It happens a lot of times. Yamcha never won anything. He was always just the jobber. And in that third tournament, compare him to Krillin, who, I can't remember if it was a first round or a second round matchup. I think it may have been the first. But Krillin fights the new reborn Piccolo, and has sort of a competitive matchup, once again, a more interesting and more close match, and sort of almost earns Piccolo's respect, if I remember correctly. But it's a great fight, and Krillin proves himself, even though he couldn't beat Piccolo, he proves himself as a tough guy, I guess. More so than Yamcha ever did. Okay, so what? At the tournaments, Yamcha never really did much, was never really that relevant to the bigger picture, but the tournaments are just a part of Dragon Ball. There's a lot of stuff that happens in between where Yamcha could be relevant, but he never was. During all the Red Ribbon Army stuff, I don't think Yamcha is seen at all. It's mostly Goku. Later on, he sort of links up with Bulma and Krillin again, and they have some shit going on with General Blue, and down in the cave with some robots and other things. But I believe, if I remember correctly, Yamcha is just nowhere to be seen, so we can't even analyse whether he was important or what his strength level was. He just wasn't even there. And during the King Piccolo stuff, after the second tournament, once again, Yamcha is nowhere to be seen because he's got a broken fucking leg from getting destroyed by Tien. While all the others, Roshi, even Chiaotzu and Tien, are all risking their lives, and in some cases losing their lives, fighting this monstrous force of King Piccolo. Yamcha's just chilling on an island with Bulma and the pig, like, oh man, got my leg in a cast, can't do anything. Guess what, Yamcha? Even if your leg wasn't in a cast, you wouldn't be able to do anything either. But there was one sort of moment in the OG Dragon Ball portion of Dragon Ball where Yamcha was kind of relevant and was kind of on the same level as the others. Kinda. It was the Fortune Teller Barber stuff, their little mini tournament thing they had. Krillin gets eliminated first round because he's fighting an invisible man, but then Yamcha steps in and he's able to beat the invisible man in what is just a gag ending. They show Roshi do they rip Bulma's top off and Roshi's nose bleeds and it covers the invisible man in blood, and the Invisible Man is really just very weak, and Yamcha's able to easily beat him. It's a gag ending. It's just a joke. But if we're to analyse it seriously, it was Krillin who came up with the plan. It was his intellect that was able to give Yamcha an easy path to victory. So I don't even count that as a feat for Yamcha, as an accomplishment. But in the following fight, I believe Yamcha won a fight on his own. I don't know if he received strategic advice from the others. I actually can't remember at all that second fight. I just seem to remember him winning one fight on his own before Goku had to step in and take the rest of the fights. I probably should have done just a tiny, minute's worth of research to check who he fought, how he won, because it's possible it wasn't even. It's possible it was another, little bit of a dodgy victory. I don't know. I don't really remember, but I seem to remember that being one kind of a Yamcha accomplishment in the fortune teller, but he won the second fight on his own merits. I believe, cannot confirm because I'm too lazy to do research or put any time in. If you're going to try and convince me that Yamcha was once relevant, you're going to have to cling to tiny little moments like this. Like one victory in the fortune teller Barber little tournament thing they put on, little battle they had. That's as good as you're going to get. Because, I mean, that's it. I mean, what else is there? After the third tournament, that's when you jump straight into Z and he gets blown up by a Cyberman. Just once again, that's the thing. Him getting killed by a Cyberman, it was like, oh man, what disrespectful. Man, they really just killed Yamcha's character, just had him get obliterated by this weak fucking thing you grow in the ground. But really, that wasn't out of the ordinary. That was pretty par for the course with Yamcha's character. He was the guy that was used to make other people look stronger. In this case, though, he didn't even get to make Nappa look strong or something. He made the Cybermen look strong. And, yeah. My point is, that wasn't out of the ordinary, really. There wasn't ever a time where, man, remember when Yamcha was relevant? Remember when he had an important place in the story? He never did. He never did. Point to the moment. Point to the moment where he was relevant to the story. If you say it with, like, any other character, I would agree, you know. Like Piccolo, for example, they had multiple opportunities, too, to make Piccolo relevant and make him the level of a Super Saiyan or higher with the whole fusing, the Namek fusing thing with Nail, and then later on fusing with Kami. They had multiple times where they did buff his character, but not enough. He still was kind of like a significant step below the Saiyans. And I do think that was a mistake in a lot of ways. They really could have done better to level the odds. And they made up this whole Namek fusing thing, power boosting, and as a way, it would have allowed Piccolo to have a massive jump in power. And he did have a massive jump in power, but it's not a big enough a jump. He was still way below everyone else. It's like, what are we doing here? Same with Krillin on Namek, where he gets his power unlocked or whatever by the Grand Emperor Supreme Kai or whatever his fucking name was. But once again, you know, they could have used that as a way to really put Krillin up there. Put him up a bit, but still, once again, far below the Saiyans, blah, 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 blah. But I mean, even these guys, even though they were far below the Saiyans, they still had their moments, you know. Krillin had his moments in the fight against Vegeta and Namek. I mean, he was there. He was kind of the only man standing at the end, had an opportunity to kill Vegeta and was only stopped by Goku. I mean, obviously, it was a multiple of them all fighting one guy, but, you know, but he was there. He was still had his moments, and it was obviously on Namek having his moments, even if he wasn't at the level of a Saiyan. Tien had his big moment in the Cell Saga, even though he's not the level of a Saiyan. Tien still had his moments. But Yamcha didn't. And so while you might lament that fact, you might be like, man, well, why couldn't Yamcha have his moments? That's Yamcha. He never had his moments. When did he have his moments in the OG Dragon Ball? When they were fighting King Piccolo, he had a broken leg. The Red Ribbon Army stuff, he was nowhere to see. He was fuck-assing around, training. God knows what he's training for. Probably just trying to, his darndest to catch up, but it was all for naught, because Krillin and Goku continued to surpass him at every step of the way. Of course, Yamcha sat out of the Cell Saga. Of course, he didn't do shit. Of course, he didn't risk his fucking life doing anything, because he sucks. And whenever he tried to do anything, he got fucking fucked. Even his abilities, the least call it. I mean, his sort of spirit ball thing, it's okay. I don't hate it, but I mean, come on. The fucking Psybeam is way better, or the fucking Solar Flare, or the Destructo Disc are all way better and are all way often used by other characters because of how effective and good they are compared to his pinty little baseball fucking spirit ball. And he got cucked by Vegeta. That's one thing he had going for him. He got with Bulma very briefly in the very beginnings of Dragon Ball. That didn't last, and then Vegeta comes strutting in and took his woman and made a half-breed Saiyan that would fucking is way stronger than Yamcha could ever even dream of being. Now, I personally may be a little biased against Yamcha because just as a character, even from the very beginning, I don't know, I never really cared for him. I never found him that interesting. Come on. I mean, Krillin, Goku as kids, far more interesting. Not only better fighters, but even Roshi is far more interesting. Fucking Oolong, Bulma, all of them, just Yajirobe later on. All these characters, I don't know, they're more interesting than Yamcha. He's just kind of like, he's Yamcha. Yamcha is so unimportant that when Goku became an adult, Toriyama decided, well, I don't know, they're going to look a little too similar to Yamcha now when they're both wearing orange. I'll just put horrible facial scars on Yamcha, completely unexplained, off screen, off panel. We'll just scar Yamcha's face so nobody would ever dare confuse him with the great almighty Goku. Listen, if you're a Yamcha fan and you hate the fact that Yamcha's not relevant in Z, that he's just such a non-factor, okay, you got a point. But if you're going to start saying, you know, man, I wish he was still relevant, that's where we got a problem, because look at Dragon Ball. Look at the story. Look at the anime. He was never relevant. There was no time where he was relevant. If you wished he was relevant, fine. But don't wish he was still relevant, because he wasn't to begin with. He never was. He was always a jobber. The one sort of area where maybe I could sympathize, maybe I could somewhat, we could find some common ground, me and the Yamcha fanboys, is within Dragon Ball Super. Now, within Dragon Ball Super, Yamcha is still a joke. He's still not relevant, and there's no reason for him to be, except for the fact that other characters like your Piccolos, your Krillins, even Roshis get kind of buffed out of nowhere with not a very good explanation, seemingly just because people like the characters and they wanted more characters to be relevant for certain fights and stuff, so they just, out of nowhere, unexplained, sort of breaking the own set rules of the universe that was established in Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, they just made characters like Roshi strong enough to hang with people that they really shouldn't have been able to hang with logically if we were trying to keep some consistency there. So, you know, because they did it for those characters, there's really no reason they couldn't have done it for Yamcha, just buffed him out of nowhere. Instead, they chose to keep him as the joke and make him even bigger of a joke. So I could sympathise with you a little there if you're talking specifically about Dragon Ball Super, like, man, couldn't they have made Yamcha relevant there? They could have, if they wanted to. But keeping Yamcha as a joke, keeping Yamcha as a non-factor, is really more in line with his character. It's more accurate to the original source material. So you should take solace in that. Not to mention, the infamous baseball episode of Dragon Ball Super is my favourite episode of all of Dragon Ball Super. Even if you hate Dragon Ball Super, Woody, you gotta see that episode and just love it. And I like Yamcha in it. That's the one thing about Yamcha is, what is he then, a joke character? But in the OG Dragon Ball and stuff, I don't know, I never really found him funny. I never found him interesting. He's this joke of a character that isn't funny, really, for the most part, that I just don't care about. But in Dragon Ball Super, specifically in that baseball episode, he is a joke of a character, but I actually find him funny. It's a funny joke, that whole episode. Not just him, all the other characters, but the way he's used in that episode, and the way he is used in Dragon Ball Super, very sparingly, I actually don't mind. Now, he's not relevant in terms of power to the others, but for once in his darn life, I find him a little bit interesting. Also, this spin-off manga, the time I got reincarnated as Yamcha, kinda sucks. Not really a fan of it. I'm not reviewing it in this episode. Maybe I'll review it in depth in another Manga Tuesday. But spoiler alert, I don't really care for it. It's kind of shit. I wouldn't even waste my time reading it unless you're a massive Yamcha fan. Boy. Anyway, I feel like I've repeated myself a lot. Like, the same point could have been made in like 2-3 minutes, but instead it's going to be like 10-20 minutes. So maybe I should just quit while I'm not too far behind. Like Yamcha. He's way behind everyone. And guess what? He always has been. Have I convinced you? If I haven't, name the time he was relevant. Name the time he wasn't just the guy used to show how strong somebody else was. Listen, if you're a Yamcha fan, fine, but just, you know, I'm a Roshi fan. I fucking love Roshi. He's one of my favourite characters. Top 5 easily, probably top 3. But, you know, pretty early on, he gets surpassed. I mean, by the time we get into Z, he's kind of irrelevant. He's too old. The Saiyans have, but even the Krillins and the Tiens and that have surpassed him. So be it. My biggest problem with the Z portion, with Roshi, isn't that his power level isn't enough. It's just that he's not in the story enough. I mean, he's funny without, you know, having to be the most powerful character, but they still don't use him enough for comedic moments. That's my biggest problem. But for any of the people out there, and there are people out there that act like, man, I remember when Yamcha wasn't just a joke. When Yamcha was... No, he was always just a joke. I've said that. I mean, this whole video has just been saying that, but he was basically always just a joke. He was always the guy to lose to some other strong guy. For the 100th millionth time now, Yamcha is, and always was, a jobber. For a rating, I give Yamcha a 5 out of 10. And now, it's time for a brand new weekly segment here on Manga Tuesday. How was the latest Hunter x Hunter chapter? The latest chapter, chapter 392, it was good. I guess that pretty much sums things up. Thanks for watching, and as always,
it's just another Tuesday. Tuesday. And if you were in for a spell, wear a pulse to in order you can help them. Well, yeah. No.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing, testing.